Hello, my name is Putkonen. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm talking about the questionable value of practice. I thought I would do this topic as there was an interesting question at my satsang here recently that I do at my house. I was asked, well, you have videos where you say that there's nothing you can do for enlightenment. And so where does that put practice? What is the value of practice? Does it have no value? And it is a sticky question, really, because it's not a clear-cut question. I know that there's a lot of faith and belief behind the idea of practice, if I just practice enough, but it's not as easy as that. There's an analogy I like to use in this, and that's falling asleep. When we fall asleep naturally, barring drugs, anesthesia, things like that. When we're naturally falling asleep, we're not particularly causing ourselves to fall asleep. In fact, if we go to bed with the idea that it's vitally important that I fall asleep and I must fall asleep soon, and so we go to bed trying to fall asleep, much of the time we find we can't fall asleep. And awakening and enlightenment is like that. And so, does that mean nothing has, value per se in helping fall asleep? Well, no. If you want to fall asleep, you go into a dark and quiet room, you get comfortable, and you go to sleep. Why do we do this? Because it's easier to fall asleep. It's more conducive. Now, does a quiet and dark room and getting comfortable cause sleep? Well, no. Any insomniac can tell you it doesn't cause sleep. And if you go in a dark and quiet room and lay down and you don't want to fall asleep at all, you can keep yourself from falling asleep. Also, isn't it possible to fall asleep sitting up in the sun? Well, of course. You could be just lounging in a chair in the sun and fall asleep, kind of a cat nap in the middle of the day. So a dark and quiet room is not required. It's not necessary to fall asleep, but it cannot be denied that it does make it more conducive. And so this is where practice falls in. Certain practices make enlightenment, awakening, liberation, pick your term, but it makes this happening, this grace, more likely to occur. And other practices have no impact or the reverse impact. So when you say, what's the value of practice? It depends on the practice. Now, pretty much everything I talk about falls into two categories. There is being still, silent, fully aware, not even thinking. This could be termed mindfulness, being present, meditation, pick your term. They're not really all that different. It's just being still, silent, fully aware. And this is more of an internal being still and silent, more importantly than physical, because there's a walking meditation where you could be still, silent, fully aware while walking. And so that's one aspect. And it has its place because enlightenment is sometimes called seeing what is as it is, implying that we're not seeing what is as it is, we're actually seeing illusion. We're seeing what is not and taking it to be for what it is. Kind of like a mirage. We see water and we think there's water, not realizing what is really going on. And so in this seeing what is as it is, it helps to not be distracted. And thought is a distraction, because thought isn't what is. thought is never about the now. Thought can never be happening in real time about the now. The closest thought can touch is a moment ago, or projected speculation a moment to come. Thought is never about now. Now happens, and then thought critiques or talks about it, which is a moment later. And so thought can never touch now. And if enlightenment, like I said, is said to be seeing what is as it is, what is now. And thereby, thought cannot touch it. You cannot think your way to seeing it. You can only see it. And you can only see it if you're not distracted by what is not. And what is not is all these thoughts, because all these thoughts are not about now. No thought is about now. And so being still, silent, fully aware is one of those few times where we're just not distracted by thought. And we're just being fully aware of what is. And we're looking, i.e. being aware. I'm just aware, looking, still, silent, fully aware, not even thinking. And that provides an opportunity to make it easier, more conducive, to see what is as it is because of the lack of distraction. Now the other practice, number 2, is, yes, there is a me doing it. I have some people going, well, isn't this a me doing it? Yes, but it's not that much of a me, but what you're doing is, it's a me diminishing the me. So what you could do is self-diminishment in some way. That's the other, second aspect. And so this could be all sorts of activities and practices. Really, a lot of practices, spiritual practices, come down to diminishing the me in some way, either overtly or subtly. I mean, take forgiveness. Some people, spend a lot of time doing forgiveness meditations and forgiveness exercises. Well, what are you doing? You're letting go of the emotional baggage that the me is holding on to. And this effort the me is using to hold on to this baggage is help fueling the idea of me. And so when all this baggage is let go, there's less to hold the me together. The me becomes more pliable, so to speak. Or you could use self-investigation. You could look at this me you feel and think yourself to be, and look at it deeply enough that you may realize you're not that. And I've talked about it in previous exercises. Somebody might say, well, I'm the body, I'm all the body. Well, question that. Is there exceptions to the rule? If you get a haircut or a nail clipping, are you less so? And you can viscerally feel, no, I'm not less so. I'm exactly as much and totally what me before and after a nail clipping or a hair clipping. And so that's 2 parts of the body that you're not. And you can just keep going and finding exceptions to the rule. And you just start dwindling away the idea that you're the entire body. And eventually you may find out you're none of the body. But what are you doing? You're diminishing the idea of me. This unseen, uninvestigated idea of me. You're delving into it and dispelling it. Shadow work has the same effect. Shadow work is the repressed aspects of the me. And so there's effort being made to repress this. So it's the me resisting itself in a way, the darker aspects of itself. And so when you're integrating the shadow, shadow work, that kind of thing, you're basically removing some of the power of the idea of me. You're also integrating that which is unseen. And like I said, what is unseen persists. What is unseen just remains. Until something is fully, totally understood and seen, it's really never taken care of. Be it suffering, the idea of me, or otherwise. Until it's seen through in its depths and totally understood, it doesn't change anything. So if you are doing shadow work and you're uncovering these aspects and bringing unknown aspects that are unseen to the conscious awareness and being seen, change also happens there. So there is this diminishment of the me, or disempowering of the me through shadow work, because the stuff no longer needs to be resisted. It's being integrated. It is also now something that is somewhat seen, and so this all has different effects. But you can go on endlessly, really. I mean, most spiritual practices, like I said, I find fall into those two groups. It's either being still, silent, fully aware, not even thinking, or it's diminishing the me in some way. And these two aspects help set conducive environments, or set a more conducive environment for awakening and enlightenment to happen. And so, is there value in being still, silent, fully aware? Yes. Is there value in diminishing the idea of me? Yeah. However, if you become attached to the practice, it soon becomes counterproductive. And what I mean by that is, let's say someone is meditating all the time and they have very spiritual experiences and stuff like this, and it starts becoming part of the idea of me. Well, look at all the experiences I have had. Look at all the progress I have made. And why can't I get to the finish line of enlightenment? And all this starts, turning as it turns into part of the me story. And so it is possible to take meditation even too far and turn it into something that has a purpose and has progress and all this stuff, and all you're doing is turning it into a way for the me to grab it and go, look at what I've done, look at the progress I've done. And instead of diminishing the me or being still, silent, fully aware, now you've added all this extra activity and me-ness to the equation. And this is why a lot of, say, like Zen masters have cautioned, well, meditation should be done without purpose. There's purposelessness in meditation, because you're trying to not give a foothold for the me to grab it and own it. Because if there's no purpose in meditation, you're not trying to get anywhere. And if there's no purpose, you can't claim achievements. So, there is this aspect of even the most benign of practices can turn into counterproductive aspects. Even diminishing the me. Somebody can become very, very, gung-ho about diminishing the me. And even when you're diminishing the me, you never get to zero. It's one of those curves that flattens out well above zero and goes on for infinity, above zero. It never goes to zero. In diminishing the me, the goal, the purpose, is not to eliminate the me. It is simply to weaken it, to make it more pliable, to diminish it in size. And at no point do you want to start going the other way of, look at how much of the me I've eliminated. Look at the progress I've made. And start turning it into a way to build the me again. Because that's what happens is the me tries to claim this and start using what we're doing, for its own salvation. And that's where you get into some of the most frustrated of spiritual seekers that may have been doing this 40, almost 50 years. And they're like, I've been doing this forever, meditating or self-inquiry or whatever. And it's like, I still don't get it. And I find there is a very solid me of, I don't get it. Why can't I get this? What do I need? And it all revolves around a very solid me at that point. And instead of weakening the me, it's become a new core. And so, that's the questionable nature of practice. The questionable value of practice is, even the most benign practices of being still, silent, fully aware, diminishing the me, can be turned into something counterproductive if taken too far. Think about if you're trying to fall asleep. Imagine saying, well, I'm going to practice going to sleep. As soon as you try to practice falling asleep, you may find it very difficult to fall asleep. Because you'll just be laying there and going, well, why can't I fall asleep now? I'm trying to do this now. It's the very efforts of trying to cause it is what's getting in the way. All you can do in the end is set a more conducive environment and let go. Cease trying to cause it. And perhaps the grace will happen. When you lay down in a still, silent, still, quiet, dark room, and you get comfortable, and you feel yourself going off to sleep, it just kind of comes. You didn't cause it. And so, just you can set conducive environment. That's about all you can do. And like I said, those are the two primary pools of practices. Anything beyond that, anything beyond diminishing the me, or being still, silent, fully aware, not even thinking, beyond these two, I find it all is usually a subtle way to build the me. It's a subtle way to make progress. It's a subtle way to attain or have experiences or gain in some way. Because there's nothing to gain in being still, silent, fully aware. You're just being still, silent, fully aware for its own sake. There's nothing to really gain in diminishing the me other than a more pliable, diminished me. You're just kind of, letting some of the stuff go. Practicing detachment and lessening the idea of my and mine. It's just a steady diminishing the me in different ways, making it a bit more pliable. Maybe even delve into the idea of attachment enough where you see through the illusion/delusion of attachment, and you see the core of it, and then you realize that you couldn't hold on in the first place. There's deeper aspects. There is this understanding that can happen that will surpass just a superficial level of practice. You can, like I said, with detachment, you could superficially be practicing detachment. And yeah, there are aspects of diminishing the me and giving up things because there's less me and mine. Less my and mine, and therefore less me. However, it can soon become counterproductive if you start getting very attached to the idea, to detachment, and go, look at all that I've given up. Look how deep in poverty I am and how much better I am to you and others because I've given up so much. And suddenly detachment becomes the new attachment. Because in Enlightenment, there isn't detachment. There's non-attachment. And so you could practice, say diminishing the me by just detachment, trying to let go of my and mine. But there's also the deeper level of understanding what's really going on that causes attachment in the first place. And if you see through that, attachment goes away. Or say, trying to work in harmony with the world instead of resisting and denying. Those kind of practices are diminishing a resistance to what is, which is what you are. Resistance and denial is how the me helps fuel itself. And so if you diminish resisting and denying, and you practice surrender or being in harmony with things, or however the spiritual practice you're trying to do does it, it's a subtle diminishment of me. But if you deeply, deeply surrender or understand what you're doing, it may be even more profound than just a superficial practice. Because some people will practice, say, surrender or detachment on a very superficial level. Oh, I need to let this go. Or they're almost repeating themselves all the time. I need to surrender, I need to surrender. Well, you're having difficulty surrendering because you don't want to surrender. You need to delve more deeply into the fundamental resistance and denial. Well, why are you resisting and denying in the first place? See that. And in the seeing of that, you may cease resisting and denying. And that which is never resisted or denied in the first place is automatically fully allowed and accepted. So surrender isn't needed. So yeah, it's a questionable value, because I won't say all practices have no value, and there's no reason to practice it anyway. That's not true. But I guess that's all I wanted to talk about today. If you got any questions, comments, please post below. But as always, thank you much.